This is the burn, Chad. We'll go dance over at 1 in the afternoon, and by 5, everything was gone. It's not a dirt.
Go ahead, shuffle up. If you have questions about regionals, please see me at break. Yeah.
Well, we met Brett in 2004.
We're a very active family, like
Very
super active.
Right.
We like camping. We like to go and do things, and you know, when we were looking for kids, we were like, when we were looking for kids to adopt, we were hoping for active kids that like to be outside and were maybe into sports or not into sports, but at least we're really interested in
Being active.
being outside and like being part of an active family. That was
Yeah.
kind of one of our criteria.
Right.
We didn't have many criteria, but that was kind of one of them.
Yep. And Brett fit in, just like the other ones did.
Yeah.
So I was already into disc golf, and I introduced the kids to that, and they all kind of enjoyed it. But Brett really enjoyed it. In Brett's case, he would just grab his frisbees, and a block and a half away we have a big park area where he can just go and throw. There's no baskets there, but he can throw and work on accuracy and distance, and he would do that, and it was just a way of getting away. But it really actually, I think, was a very big benefit for him because he developed his throwing skills away from the course. So he developed pretty quickly, and
He always wanted to play disc golf, like always. If I was ever going to run errands in the cities, he would like tag along behind me while I was getting ready around the house. Like maybe I had to, secure the other kids with things to do before I could leave, and Brett would like tag along and just wait for the right moment where he thought I was as happy as I could be, and then he'd say, "Hey, can I come with?" And I thought, oh, he wants to spend time with me. Like, oh, could you drop me at Bassett Creek, or where are you heading? If I'm going to the north, can you drop me here? If I'm going to the south, can you, drop me at Shakopee? And how long are you gonna be there? So he'd know how many holes he could try to get in before I'd pick him up again. So he was like, definitely really like had disc golf on the mind, but he was really well-rounded too.
Yep.
Like he was into sports, he was into girls, he was into friends. He had some really good friends in high school, and in middle school we had him in. He started with us in 6th grade. Was his first year of school with us, and he just was always, putting himself in the middle of whatever was going on.
but not obtrusively. This is very good talent. All the kids are very social, and Brett's has very good social abilities, and so. Anyway, so from the time that we met him at 12 till 16, and he developed into quite an athlete. He was close to becoming a man as far as size. He maybe had a couple more, as far as physical strength.
Yeah, he talked about it all the time, how tall he was. When he got taller than me, that was a huge day for any kid. It is when they get taller than their mom.
Right.
But,
and he was also the type of athlete that gravitated toward like pitching in baseball or quarterback in football. That kind of leadership didn't, it appealed to him. And so I think disc golf also, if you are that kind of a person, it helps. So he was just good at it and he really enjoyed it. And at the time I spent a lot of time playing, not that I don't now, but I spent a lot of time then and traveling, and he would come with, and it was a good time.
Day of the accident, I had the best day with Brett, which is just like luck, I guess, but we had such a good time. His best friend's name was Luke, and Luke and Brett and I played disc golf in the afternoon, the three of us, and Luke was like a super like comical, sarcastic, really cool, funny guy, and he and Brett were just like, just really playful, so they were very fun to be around. And we went and played disc golf, and I actually don't remember where we played. Was Crown? Was Crown done by then? So it was Crown, I think, because it was close. So we played Crown College, and then we went bowling in Waconia after that. So we spent the whole day together, which I didn't spend a whole day with just Brett very often, because Brett was like our easy kid. He was very, he's just really easy to parent. He didn't fly off the handle, and he didn't like need kit gloves or really. So usually when we had to separate we had the tougher kids, and Brett went off to his friend's house. So, right. so I didn't get to spend all that quality time with Brett the older he got, because he was just with his friends more. And so we went disc golfing, and then we went and played, and then we bowled in Waconia. It was just really fun. It was like, a whole day with Brett, 16-year-old Brett. And then I dropped him off with Luke at Luke's house, and Brett had just got his permit. Maybe not just got it, but he had had it for at least a couple of weeks, and Brett was driving.
Yeah.
And he had driven from Waconia to Luke's house, which is probably about 15 minutes, and he had driven the best he had ever done. And I was giving him compliments and some corrections along the way. It was night driving because it was late. It was like 11 o'clock. It was like, 10:30 or 11 when I was dropping them, and he was going to spend the night at Luke's house. And when we got out of the car, and he got out of the driver's seat, and then he said, "How was my driving?" And I said, "Your driving was impeccable today." And then they walked into the house. That was the last thing that I said to Brett before his accident, because then I went home, and like at 3 in the morning or something, 2 or 3 in the morning, the cops were knocking on the door to tell us that the accident had happened. And he I don't know if he remembers like that moment of me saying that, but he'll quote that every once in a while. Like, do you think I'm doing this in an impeccable way? And he's like harkening back to that last thing that I said to him. Yeah.
We went to impossibly, difficult news that they had to tell us.
Yeah.
And we were just, at that time, didn't know how bad it was, anything. We thought, very bad. They did say it was...
They said it was very bad, and we had to hurry but not speed.
Yeah, they said like 3 times.
To the hospital.
Don't speed. Make sure you just go there.
But it kind of the idea we got that could be so bad that he might die before we get there.
Right.
So that was a pretty hard 45-minute drive to the wrong hospital. Because we went to the wrong hospital first.
Yeah.
It was awful. And then we finally got to the hospital.
Yep, so then we went in, and Brett was, like you said, just got his permit, so he had his permit, but he didn't have it on him. He had it in his stuff, in his backpack. So
that's why it took them so long to find out where he belonged.
Right.
Like to come and find us and tell us about it, because it was like 3 a.m. So it was like 3 hours. He'd already been to the Waconia Hospital by ambulance and airlifted to Hennepin County Medical Center in Minneapolis, and was already in the emergency room by the time we got to the hospital. Got to HCMC.
Right.
So he had quite a bit of transport, and and scared, you know, an unconscious time. He was unconscious when they found him, or when the 911 was called.
His friend Luke died that night, and the driver wasn't harmed, and that became a big deal too because you know, such bad outcome, and then so that was a real bummer because it was just an accident, but it became an issue for her and for the families and things. So when we met with the doctors, they said that they're going to do everything they can to keep him alive, and that's all they could say. They gave us like kind of a heads up on what had happened, but he had tubes everywhere and not responsive at all. And
the main thing was his brain. Like his internal organs. Well, he had a collapsed lung. One of his lungs was collapsed, so he had a tube into his lung to help him breathe, or not to help him breathe, whatever the tube that goes into your lung helps you do.
Yeah,
he had one. And he had a broken bone behind his ear, and he had a pelvic bone was broken. So physically, from here down, those were all, and that's really recoverable, what I just described. But his brain damage was severe. I mean, over the course of a couple of days, they did imaging and we found out how severe his brain damage was. He had what's called diffuse axonal brain injury with shearing. So your brain has a lot of hills and valleys, when you look at the gray and white matter on a brain, it's very lumpy. His brain moved so much when his head hit a tree, when the car hit a tree and the tree was right in Brett's door, his passenger door. So his head hit the tree, and when that happened, his brain moved, and a lot of the brain matter was sheared off. So that's kind of the loss of so much skill. He had, all the way up to age 16, developed so much, and then once he did wake up from the coma, it was all a recovery period to try to recover as much of those skills as possible,
which were the global.
Yeah.
For
yeah.
The brain.
Yes, it was everything. Balance, eating, speaking, walking, any kind of body movement was affected.
Didn't speak for quite a while, many months.
Right, and then when he did start to speak, it was just like a breath. And then a month later, it was a breathy word. It's not like, there's nothing about coma in Brett's case that's like in the movies where someone just wakes up.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they're speaking, and what happened to me? It was, we measured progress or change by the week. Something, his eye would open a sliver, and that was the thing I celebrated for the whole week, because nothing else changed.
So yeah, we should back up. So he was in a coma at first, and he was in it for many weeks, like 3.5 weeks before they brought us aside and we had a conference about where he was and what the chances of recovery were, which were they're very difficult to measure, but low. That he would wake up from the coma and have any sort of quality of life at all. He might just be a vegetative state where he would eat if you put food in his mouth, but he wouldn't be conscious of what's going on. But they said if you pull the plug, so to speak, take off his breathing tube and his feeding tube right now, when he's still in a coma, then his body won't be able to support itself. He'll suffocate or whatever.
Pass away.
And so then there would be no guilt or shame or anything. It would be a decision based on what we thought the quality of life would be, what the outcomes would be. And if you waited though until he became in a vegetative state, then
there's like a point of no return.
Then you have to
It's
keep him
kind of
alive.
how it was presented to us by
Right.
the neurologists around the table and us.
because he will eventually like recover to the point where he'll be like a plant, for sure. He'll get that far. So we were like kind of posed with that question, and we were already past that. You know, we were like not really thinking that that was going to be what happened. Even if it did, like they said, it's like 1 in a million or whatever. We're like, oh,
Well, we did a
one is
bunch
good.
of research, like
We did.
a bunch of research to look for a case of someone coming out of a coma
With
as
the
severe
axonal
with
diffuse
axonal shearing, because that's relatively rare to survive that accident, that kind of brain damage that Brett had. So
There was one.
we found a case after a lot of reading that a person had been living with their parents in the state Brett was at that point. So this was probably 3 weeks after the injury, after the
Yeah,
accident.
about 3 now.
And his parents had, kept doing any kind of therapies they could and whatever. However, they were managing, keeping him alive. And he came out of his coma after 19 years. That was the one that we found that
Yeah.
gave us a glimmer of hope that Brett, besides Brett, like what we went into all that research knowing is how much of a fighter Brett is, how resilient he is, how he's a make lemonade out of lemons kind of person. He approaches any situation with a positive attitude and will work and do everything that's necessary to make it a really good situation for himself.
Right.
And so we knew all that about Brett before, that was what Brett was like. And
We're similar. We're positive thinkers. We kept it
Yeah.
positive in the recovery. We instructed all the visitors to, either
crying.
remain positive or just get out.
Yeah.
Make sure you can keep your composure, because there's a good chance that there's a consciously, not consciously, but there's a way he's taking this stuff in.
and we only wanted him to have positive thinking
Right.
from outside.
Right. Even though, of course, it's traumatic, we still wanted people to be that way. And almost everybody could handle that.
Yeah.
And the nurses would kind of like look at us kind of like, no, that's great. Because the odds were low. So we just stayed at the hospital for many weeks, and then one day a nurse came running. They found us, they have these little rooms that you can stay in. Little tiny room like this, maybe smaller.
Little door.
And then you can stay there while your family member's there. And the nurse came and knocked at the door early in the morning and said that, what happened? He opened his eyes? Something happened. He made some sort
No,
of...
he didn't open his eyes yet, but he had moved his toe or something when the doctor said.
Yeah, they always say,
There's all
move
these
your thumb, do
yeah.
this, do that.
Neurological signs. They give you some pain and hope you respond to it. For weeks and weeks and weeks, Brett hadn't done anything on those neurological
Right.
signs.
And then they asked him to move his thumb, and he moved his
Yeah.
thumb or something like that. So then we were running through the hall. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And then, we went in there and he was just totally like a statue. So we were like, well, good job anyway. And then
There's a
Over
little
the-
more celebration than that. But
over the days, then we would just watch him like a hawk for the next thing.
Yeah.
And then literally we were just like with him for a long time one day. And I think you said, you got real close to him and said, like, just give us something, Brett. Just some sign, that you can hear something or, and then he...
And it wasn't even for us as much as for the doctors and the nursing staff. We because there was some not giving up, but there was, you could feel it was just not as intense of a thought of recovery for Brett
Right.
by the staff.
There was like these points, like day
And
one,
we're still, like,
24
way up here.
hours, 72 hours, 12 days. There was like these, you know,
Yeah, these intervals where when you hit one, you're like, fuck. You know,
if you're not
how-
recovering at that point, then it's bad.
Mhm.
So whatever. Then he did. He made some.
He moved his eye, like it was you whispering in his ear, like you were like coaching him and coaching him, and we had done it before, but you could tell like it was more of almost like a kind of like a little bit of a desperate plea on our parts, and we're like, we know it's really hard, we know you're probably not going to be able to do anything for another week because you're going to use up so much energy giving us one little sign, but you have to do it, and his eye opened like a sliver, and that was kind of all we needed. Yeah, that was like it. That from that point on, we didn't have any doubts anymore, you know, that he was gonna wake up and have some kind of life, but we didn't know what it
Well,
would
we were
be
hoping
like,
for a
but-
full recovery.
Yeah, at that point we were. I'm thinking ahead now,
Yeah.
at all the knowledge I have now, but
Right.
yeah.
We're like, sweet.
Because who knows, maybe it will be like the movies.
How long till he's totally recovered? But so Gillette Rehab is where he ended up,
Yeah.
and he got in there. He skated in there. I can't remember what the last thing was, but he couldn't have, you know, round the clock nursing is what the deal was. You know, they just don't do that. They do rehab.
Yeah, at that point he still had a G2. He still had a trach at that point, so
Yeah.
we had to get him off the trach before he could go, and he did.
Yep.
We'd set little goals, you know, like weekly goals of how far I had to get him, you know, each week, and like that was one, so he could get into that rehab, and we met that one. We just like that was kind of how we kept moving forward, is just thinking like in small increments, because if you thought about the whole picture, it was way too overwhelming, like couldn't even like function if I thought about the big picture. So it was like just these little steps.
Yeah.
Just keep stepping forward. Let's just keep stepping forward. Yeah, and we got into Gillette.
Yep. And did the long road of rehab, which is, you know, just day in and day out of hours of therapy, and then 2 hours to eat, because, you know, everything was different now. And Greta stayed there. They just like had a bed right next to his bed, basically. And that became like your second home for a while.
3 months.
Yeah. He did great there. He had a great recovery. Really worked hard all the time. Some really strenuous stuff that you can't believe somebody has to do, but they have to do it to move forward. And he was willing to do it.
And he had a really amazing head nurse named Ruthie,
Yeah.
his main rehab nurse, and she like kicked my ass into gear. She kicked Brett into gear, and she was just one that wouldn't take no for an answer, and she wouldn't take anything less than 100% every single day. So
Right.
it was like I had this
She had the ability
coach
to do that.
practically.
Yeah, she could get it
It's her
out,
job.
get it out of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's really good at her job.
Yeah.
Brett hated Ruthie.
Right.
He hated Ruthie.
But he loved her in the end, you know.
Loved her in the end. She came to his graduation party. He was 16 at the accident and graduated from high school from his senior year at 18, like people do, and she came to his graduation party, and it was a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, it was like a huge celebration to see her again. And he likes her now, but
Yeah.
not then.
Right. We didn't stop doing things because he couldn't like just get up and do it.
Right.
We'd always.
Someone would say, "Hey, you can come over, but we don't have an accessible house." We're like, "We don't care. We'll carry him in."
We were lucky
and
that
I'd
we were
throw
fit.
him over my shoulder.
Right.
Yeah, and so we just made sure we kept him as active as he would have been without the accident.
Right.
That was kind of the goal.
He's stayed active, and we've kept him active. But things have changed quite a bit as far as how we live our life. You know, we do we're more aware of what it takes to get around using a wheelchair. And so, you know, our eyes are opened on that level, and we try to figure out ways to make it accessible if we can for Brett, you know, so that he can do it on his own as much as possible. He's a pretty independent guy now, runs his own schedule and with our help, but you know, manages his own day from the time he gets up and gets ready for the day, gets his coffee, and jumps on his scooter and goes down to the grocery store or
The coffee shop.
the coffee shop or wherever.
The other day I had gone to pick up the peaches at the peach stop, and on my way back he was heading to the clinic, and I didn't arrange that or anything.
Right.
He
made his own appointment.
Did you talk to him about it?
I mean, we've talked about it, but he must have made his own appointment.
Yeah. So, and I love that he just, like, all of a sudden I'm doing something that is totally independent of Brett, and then I see him doing something totally independent of me. And I didn't even know where he was going, or, you know, and I don't have to worry about it because I know he's going to be safe. He's going to make, you know, good choices for himself, and
that was a big worry for a while.
A long time, because he's still moving forward and like learning and improving in a lot of different ways. So even a year from now, I know things are even going to be more secure and independent for him.
Right. The family loves poker. We always have, but he really took it up because of, you know, the way the playing field is level, as far as you don't have to stand up and do anything physically for poker.
It's really accessible.
Right. And
it's always in a bar or restaurant, which is accessible, you know, for a restroom, and, you know, there's just a very independent activity. It's great. But he loves it, outside of it just being, you know, good for someone that uses a wheelchair or whatever. Yeah. The people are really, basically, generally pretty cool, and like it's a nice social circle.
Right. And he does well, so that's also cool. I mean, you'd have to do well to stay interested, so he does pretty good.
Mm-hmm. He wins a lot.
Yeah. He's also got back into art. He did a little bit of art before his accident.
Yeah, he drew.
He loved art, but he just was a very active person and didn't find a ton of time to do that, but he did like it.
Yeah.
And now he has got back into it. We've taken 11 of his drawings and made them into greeting cards, and then he'll go to the farmer's market or a craft show or some other event and set up a booth and sell those cards. And he loves doing that too. He's very personable, and he's a very good salesman. So it's another great way of just engaging the public and engaging your brain with new experiences too. So because
it's always somebody new you're talking to. You gotta, you know, think on your feet when you're trying to sell something.
They might ask you a question.
What's the best angle? Like, based on what they say. Like, I don't like sales at all, but he's so good at it. He'll listen to what they say, and then he'll change his tactic or his spiel based on, you know, how he thinks he can get them to buy a card based on what they said. And I mean, it's all very, like, you just have to be really quick and you have to think on your feet, and it's been an awesome way for him to just keep growing as a person.
Yeah.
All of his sales.
Top 3 things in my life would be my dad, my mom, and Prodigy discs. Not technically in that order either. And Blue Ribbon Pines would also be up there. And Kylie Rogan. She is a great PCA. And Jane Snyder. Those are my 2 favorite PCAs.
He's a funny guy. Very funny.
He's
very quick-witted.
Yeah.
So take a picture. It'll last longer.
He had a severe injury where he lost his best friend and his life was radically altered, and he's complained maybe 3 times about that in 8 years. And the things that he would say would be just like legitimate things. He has a thing called a intention tremor on his left side. So when he tries to grab for something with his left hand, it causes a tremor. When he's not doing anything with his left hand, it just kind of sits there.
It might shake a little bit,
Right. But as soon as he starts thinking about it, especially when he's drawing, he's like, okay, I'm going to be drawing, and this hand is going to be shaking and making me move. So that'll make it shake more. So a couple times he said, please can we just cut it off?
Yeah.
Which just...
Like in real low, a couple real low moments.
Right.
But that's it. Like depression is another really common side effect of having a brain injury, and he's never been depressed.
No.
And we have watched for it, like eagle-eyed for it, because we know that it's part of a brain injury.
Right.
And the therapists have told us what to watch for, and he just hasn't been depressed. He's just really just loves whatever life has for him at the moment.
And he's
always been like that.
There's something else too. I agree with what you say, but at the same time, the thing that made him, and I know him from disc golf. I mean, I pretty much live in terms of like how would it affect disc golf. The best disc golfers, the best disc golfers forget their last shot almost immediately, and they're just thinking about the next shot. Even if the last shot was really bad, they're not thinking about it anymore. They're just on to the next thing. And so with Brett, he's just the same way. Like, oh, this is where I'm at. Here we go. You know, and there's no time spent bumming out about something that you don't have or whatever, which is really an amazing talent because it's rare.
Yeah.
Now he's sponsored. He didn't like going to play disc golf at first because he just didn't have any physical ability. And he was like, what's the point?
Yeah, a couple of years.
Because he was so great at first. And then he thought he was just going to recover and like within, say, 6 months to a year, just be back out there. He really thought that. And I really did too at first. Because he's got amazing talent.
We just didn't know.
Right. And then he didn't. And then there were some milestones that we were looking at that he didn't, that he wasn't getting. And he was very strong, but he couldn't walk without falling because of the balance and all these things. And so we kind of went away from disc golf for a while, where he wasn't really...
He did. He really, I kept saying, hey, you should take him to this event because he'd be around his friends, his disc golf friends, and he just didn't like going, and, then we just really knew we had to stop pushing it. And we stopped pushing it, not knowing if he was ever going to be interested in it again. That was really hard as a parent to pull back and just kind of let him, be what he wanted to do what he wanted to do, be who he wanted to be. When I wanted him to be into disc golf,
right?
Because I thought that was what was going to be the best thing for him. But it really ended up being the best to let him find his own way.
And he has some friends that are disc golfers that are actually true friends. That we have he's a friend named Jane that is pretty much just one of the most amazing people that anyone could ever meet. And so she would take him on disc golf adventures, because she's a disc golfer and she knows he's at heart a disc golfer. Mm-hmm. And she really was one of the people that got him back into it.
Yeah.
And then he, so now he plays almost every day, and we're lucky to have some friends that, looked at him and said, we'd like to sponsor him as a professional disc golfer. And, what that has done for him, because he does represent well as a professional disc golfer that uses a wheelchair for mobility. He's a good rep for them, and you know, so they're getting a good representative, but he's also getting just a dream to be sponsored. So when he goes out and plays, he's always making sure that he's wearing the clothes and talking to people about Prodigy, because that's his you know, that's his group, that's his people. It's pretty cool to have a sponsored disc golfer, pro disc golfer in the family, and it being, you know, legitimate. It's pretty cool. I mean, at first it felt like it was like, you know, support. You know, they're supporting him, but over the time now he's, I think, legitimized it, and so it's pretty neat.